last. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy, Devin Gonzalez, and I am honored to welcome a truly inspiring guest, Dominika Staniewicz. I just had it right, too. Staniewicz, right?
No, but that's okay. We're good.
Staniewicz. I literally was just prepping myself in my head. My fault. But Dominika is one of the few neuroencoding specialists, and since this is the Mindset Cafe, why wouldn't we bring on someone that's a neuroencoding specialist is the question I have to ask you, right? So she is a certified brain coach under the renowned Dr. Amen, and a holistic life coach as well, with a unique approach that blends this cutting edge neuroscience with the emotional and practical life coaching strategies that some of them we've covered, but I guarantee she's going to go into a lot more depth than what we've talked about, on the Mindset Cafe so far. And I am super excited to dive in. And I don't want to give away too much, about her neuroencoding and, all these other crazy strategies that involve the brain. But let's dive into how she reprograms the minds of people and overcomes trauma with them and brings them to their full potential. Dominika, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today.
That is such an honor and pleasure. And you know what? I love your logo, the brain out there, but it should be actually a brain set, not a mindset. Mind is so abstract, and brain is actually something tangible we can change.
Exactly. See, I already know we're going to be diving in depth on this one. This is awesome. So let's dive straight in, with how did you get involved in, the whole neuroencoding and, get involved in your interest in the brain?
Right. So it is, as everybody has a story. And one of my stories that leads to this is my struggles in life. And I was a coach previously, and I worked also in HR, and I was an analyst as well. And I was also a professor in a university. And, I was so miserable. And I couldn't say it's perimenopause. I couldn't say I'm a teenager and my hormones are going crazy. I was just miserable all over. And at a university, briefly, they were talking about neuroplasticity, but it really wasn't at that time discovered. Remember, I went to university 20 plus years ago, right? So this was a brand new study. There was not much. They were just saying, oh yeah, actually neuroplasticity lasts a lifetime. It doesn't end when you're 25, which was the previous belief. And me being epileptic and having seizures over and over that were triggered by stress, lack of food, and lack of sleep, it was all kind of a combination of everything. And then when I moved to US and I run into Dr. Daniel Amen and Tony Robbins, and on Tony Robbins' stage, I met Joseph McClendon III, who is the founder member. Well, he's the founder and I'm the founder member of the Neuroencoding Institute. And he has a PhD in neuroscience, and Dr. Amen is a neuropsychiatrist with a very different approach, where they combined their forces and created something called brain revolution. And because I'm science-based, and I do believe in spirituality, but I also believe in science that's practical, I absolutely fell in love. Needless to say, a person who used to have seizures every 3 months, grand mal, full option, laying on the floor, I haven't had a seizure in 8 years. And that is all because of changing my brain. And it's not a take a pill program, but it's literally changing how your brain functions. Most people don't know that there are at least 6 types of depression, but outside they present the same way. You cannot tell from the outside. You need to look at the brain. And we do that with SPECT scan and Dr. Amen. Most people don't know that there are 7 types of ADHD, and every ADHD is in different part of your brain, or you can have multiple at the same time. So the same structures and things will not work. And ADHD is actually not a disorder. It's a normal brain, because there's now studies show that most of us are so-called neurodivergent, and neurotypical is unusual. That's not normal. So the normal switched around on us. And that's fascinating, because now we can see that as a superpower. And all of that, and me working on me and practicing those strategies and seeing how my brain changed, how the quality of my life changed, what Dr. Amen and Joseph preach, it's the science, it's the brain health that is important, that produces the result we've been always talking about, which is our behavior, beliefs, and psychology. Psychology is the simpler version of what we do. Neuroscience digs in, not only looks at the behavior, but then looks at the networks in your brain, which are connecting, how they're connecting, how can you change the road and pathways. And it is so fascinating because it might sound complicated, but we practice this with very simple exercises that do go your brain. And your brain is the CEO of your life. It decides who you marry, what type of business you run, what decisions you make, how you feel, how your heart beats, and everything else. And at the same time, brain is connected to your heart, brain is connected to your gut. But all of those structures, we used to talk about grit. Now we know that the gray matter is responsible for it, right? And now we know that white matter is also important because those are the highways. That's how you access deeper information. And because we know all of this and we have so much science out behind it, we can have specific, simple exercise that you will repeat every day and will change how your brain functions. It will literally grow. Do you know this thing between our ears can regenerate itself? It's a magical computer that we can now design the software for your life, how you want it, when you want it, with practice, and it will run that software until it serves you, and then we can reprogram your brain again.
That is awesome. I do have to say, the energy and the excitement that you have for this, it excites me. That is awesome. And I can tell, some of that is probably came from your own like personal results that have came from this. And when you have a connection more than just, an interest in a subject, but you have a connection on a personal result level, it clearly shows. And so I do want to ask a question, rewinding a little bit to the epilepsy. And this is my in knowledge of it, because I thought epilepsy was, with like lights and flashing and stuff, you go into seizures. Is that what it is, or is there other kinds of epilepsy, or
absolutely. There are a bunch of epileptic seizures. So there are grand mal, which I had, which are full loss of consciousness, shaking, jaw clenching, and the whole 9 yards, losing memory, forgetting things. And then there are also petite seizures, which look like absences. They look like you're talking to somebody dozes off, and then they come back. They're not as dangerous, but then driving with those seizures might be challenging. But the thing is that my epilepsy is actually genetic. So I have a gene that unfortunately triggers that. But every epilepsy, well, not every, a lot of epileptic people, nothing is for everybody, have triggers. For me, it was lack of sleep, stress, and malnutrition. If I get really stressed, I stop eating. So it was like a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. And then I stress, and because I stress, I don't eat, and because I don't eat, I don't sleep, and it's a whole thing. But I know a person who has hormone-induced epilepsy. So 5 days before her menstrual cycle, she gets a seizure. I know people who do get the light. I'm not sensitive to lights. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. So there are so many different types of seizures, but all of them boil down to your brain. It's your brain health. And one of the important things we found with epigenetics, which I'm not a specialist in, but the knowledge is important in general, so I don't teach it, but I know how to use it, is that gene expression is dependent on the environment. So if you have an obesity gene, I'm the only person not obese in my family. I'm the only person, but I exercise, I eat right. I'm not skinny, but I'm definitely not obese. So the expression of the gene, I never triggered the gene to get expressed, and you can take away the expression. Same with a lot of cases with epilepsy, not all, nothing is for everybody, but you can through the lifestyle. I religiously go to bed before midnight. I call myself a Cinderella. So when there's a party, I run around at midnight and I go home and I sleep. I sleep my 7 to 9 hours. It's religious. Very rarely I break that rule. Of course I do, but it's, 5 times a year, maybe, right? It's one thing. I don't watch TV before bed. I take away blue light. I worked on my stress management. I worked on my perception of stress. I worked on my blood work. I took all the non-invasive ways that we know and our science proven, and I implemented them in my life. So the gene expression wouldn't be as severe. And the result is 8 years with 0 seizures and an EEG that's normal with no changes.
Wow. That's awesome. So with someone, and the reason I asked about the light one is I do have 2 friends that, are epileptic, and it revolves around, light flashes or strobe flashes and stuff like that. Are those kind of epileptic seizures something that the neuroencoding can help, or is
Brain
that?
health, definitely. I mean, ask them, how much do they drink? Do they drink? Because you cannot drink a drop of alcohol when you're epileptic. Do you smoke? Do you drink caffeine? What do you eat? What is the food you eat? How much do you sleep? And the truth is that does, and your brain health per se, the organ, how it functions, it will influence how often you get those seizures. Now, if you trigger by light, not every light triggers you, not every flickering will trigger you, right? And the healthier, the stronger the brain, the less triggering becomes. Now, I cannot promise that if they do everything how we're supposed to as epileptics do, and not even epileptics, every person is supposed to really do those things, that it's going to go away. But I am almost 100% sure that it would get better. Now, again, there are some people who are missing part of the brain. There are plenty of different options. Light triggering, there are special lights that reduce light triggering. Maybe they should wear those glasses when they go out so it doesn't get triggered. There are plenty of things. And of course, staying away from something that you're sensitive to, desensitizing yourself. But the only way you can desensitize yourself, it's like kind of trying to lift, 100 pounds if you barely lift 5. No, you first need to build up the strength of the muscle or of your brain so your brain functions better. And, I wouldn't recommend, if you're light triggered, to go to a, rave. That's not the best idea. Taking drugs, marijuana, they're not helpful. They're not.
Right.
And people think it's getting better. It's actually, I would show you brain scans. If you would see how a brain of a person who drinks just 1 drink a day looks, you would stop drinking for life.
Wow.
And you would never think that. We say, oh, it's only 1 drink. No, that 1 drink literally creates holes of inactivity in your brain, and you look like a Swiss cheese.
Wow. So, I mean, that's honestly, that's so interesting. And honestly, that I don't even know where to begin from there. And so let's take it from, I know you mentioned, like, with psychiatry, and, that's like the base level, and then this is a little more in depth. So can you explain a little bit more, like, what neuroencoding is and how it is different from like traditional, like, life coaching or traditional therapies?
Okay. So neuroencoding is based in neuroscience. So everything we do has been done under an MRI, SPECT scan, or PET scan, and we saw how the brain reacted in different situations. And knowing that, exercises and practices that are very regular. For example, do you really care why you procrastinate? No, you want to get rid of procrastination. Do you really care where the procrastination lives? Not really, but I know where it lives. It has a home in your brain, and it's in prefrontal cortex dorsal area. That's where it lives. Now, that information might be great, but what do you do to get rid of it? Well, it turns out that part of procrastination is lack of oxygenation and lack of nutrients going to that area of your brain. So what can you do to stimulate that specific area of the brain? Well, it turns out that learning in the morning how to juggle with 3 balls, and if you achieve that success, you actually, because of eye-hands coordination, and because of the concentration, you'll actually get this part of your brain going, and within 3 to 4 months, your procrastination will decrease by 30 to 40%.
Wow.
That's neuroscience. That is literally specific targeting for whatever you're existing. If you're a person with neuroencoding and you are, for example, experiencing anxiety, we will teach you how to rehearse anxiety. So like an actor, you rehearse before it happens, and then when it shows up, you have a tool to break it immediately and you never experience it again. Wow. And it's targeting specific networks in your brain, specific areas of your brain. If you get stuck on thoughts, right? We know that a part of your brain called anterior cingulate, ACG, is it ACG? Gear shifter, yes, ACG. So that's your gear shifter in your brain. I'm still not awake. I haven't had my coffee yet. Dr. Amen, he's very much against coffee. So that gets stuck. So there is a protocol literally for that, what to do to stop getting stuck on your over and over going thoughts. And through specific questions will activate different parts of your brain. There are ways, for example, where you procrastinate. We actually invite you to procrastinate if you are going to be creative, because it shows up that procrastination in the brain and the areas of the brain that are responsible for that is connected also to creativity. You cannot be creative without procrastination. But then we need to discover, are you procrastinating because you're afraid to do something? Or are you procrastinating because you want to be creative? Or are you procrastinating and because you're getting the high of I will make it, and there is this energy drift and dopamine hit, and maybe you're addicted to dopamine, so your procrastination is not procrastination, addiction to dopamine. And then we have different ways of practicing those things so it doesn't happen. And it's all based on what we see, what happens in your brain, what lights up, what goes down. It's literally, we're programming your brain, deciding what do you want to change, where you want to be, what behaviors you want to change, and then we go into biology. We hack your brain, your psychology with biology, basically.
Wow. I think some people get creative with procrastinating.
They
Like
have
they
to.
no, like they get to procrastinate. They start getting creative on the reasons why they need to procrastinate, right? Or how they're going to procrastinate, right? It's, oh, I can't do this right now because I need to do this. And it's like something that they didn't even have planned for the day. And it's like you start thinking of all these other things you could do besides the one thing that you should be doing. But that's crazy. So is that similar to, with like stress and self-doubt and a lot of the other struggles that people commonly face, you guys use, where it's you guys kind of put them in a situation and make them feel either stressed or give them a sense of anxiety or even a sense of self-doubt, and then start to reprogram it just like an actor would?
So we could do the stop technique that I just talked about. That's one of the ways, but there are other ways. For example, we literally prove you wrong. I mean, we don't do anything. You do everything to yourself. We guide you in a specific way where it has been, funny enough, it has been shown that that if you are being creative and you're procrastinating and you're experiencing self-doubt and self-loathing, notice that if you go outside and you talk to people, you question everybody. Oh, I disagree with it. Oh, how do you know this? Oh, this. But when our thought comes in, which is our brain lies to you and it lies to everybody, then you go, oh yeah, this is true. So one of the ways of teaching people how to stop the self-doubt is actually providing different data to your brain that's fact-based. It's also realizing that any emotion you feel, it's something you have created consciously or not consciously. And it's not we call this emotion, but actually it's a chemical dump from your brain that creates a feeling in your body. So if there's a process for it, then what we can do, we can break the process before the chemical dump starts, or just at the beginning so it's not as intense. But to do that, your brain needs data. And funny enough, they have scanned people's brains under prayer and under gratitude practice, and it lights up like a Christmas tree. It literally rewires your brain. Your brain will find whatever you're looking for. So if you keep telling yourself, I'm an idiot, your brain will pull information from your whole life where you acted like an idiot. Now go, of course you are. Of course you are. But then if you ask yourself, is it really true? Am I always an idiot? Guess what? Your brain will start searching for information. Will go, well, I was an idiot here, and 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 I did good here, and I did here. Okay, well, am I an idiot? No. And that puts a doubt, a riff, and it changes the structure of the connection. And then we keep working on it to strengthen, because every neural pathway, which is responsible for your automatic behaviors, those are connections of neurons, and they create like those little ribbons. At the beginning, they're just so fragile, like a hair. But then when you keep repeating something over and over, that's how we get habits. It becomes like a ribbon. And after that, it becomes just a sidewalk. Then it becomes a one-way street, then a two-way street, then a freeway, then a highway. And when it's a highway, it becomes automatic. Notice that even you nodding your head, you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to agree with her, so I'm going to nod your head. Your brain doesn't do that. It's an automatic response. And 95% of your life is an automatic response that you have nothing to do with it. Imagine you can program every automatic response in your brain and you could respond differently.
That's crazy. Your brain's literally a computer, and when you're asking yourself a question, it's like you're typing that question into the Google of your brain.
Yes, and it will search for information and it will then create, because your brain always distorts, deletes, and generalizes. Anytime you use words like always, never, people were laughing, oh, words don't matter. Well, unfortunately, every word that's emotional has a chemical assigned to it, or a bunch of chemicals. And what they have found, the less vocabulary you have, the more 0 to 100 you go. So people who, for example, know I'm angry, I'm pissed off, I'm furious, and let's say, I don't know, fourth word, they only have 4 ways that they can feel. So those people need to develop their vocabulary so the brain can start assigning different feelings and emotions, because it doesn't, if it has only 4, it has to put the event in one of the 4 buckets. But it has 50 buckets and it's a line. It doesn't have to go from first to the 100. It can go, well, this is not I'm furious and pissed off. This is I'm peeved. This is I'm annoyed. This is I'm irritated. And when you practice assign situations in your brain to that, your brain creates another generalization, but that one is serving you. We need to generalize, otherwise we would go crazy. But now we can create the ones that will help us. So if you have 50 options of experiencing love, joy, feeling, happiness, anger, whatever, and you have 50 options for each, you have such a diversity and you can control how your emotions grow. So you don't get that, cortisol dump. You don't get that fight or flight mode, because there are a lot of steps to get there. And your life becomes easier because when you lower and change the chemical releases and change how your brain reacts to things, you perceive the world differently because there are not enough stressors.
That's so powerful. And honestly, what interested me really about this subject too was I was listening to a soldier speak. He was either Delta Force or he was a Navy SEAL, and he was being interviewed, and he was actually talking about this topic where he had gone through, he had psychiatrists, he had therapists, and nothing was really working until he started getting into neurotherapy and neuroencoding. And so when I saw that you wanted to come on, I was like, I want to dive into this. So how have you seen results, or how does it go with, like PTSD and neuroencoding? How does that whole process work? Is it similar? Is it a little bit more in depth? Because a soldier, or even just a traumatic experience for someone that's maybe not a soldier, that's maybe not as easy, in my opinion, again, not knowing, but then just general stress.
And that's a very important thing to do. So first thing we do, we start to define what is trauma, because trauma literally biologically changes how your brain looks like. Literally, it's not a figure of speech. It changes the structures. It has, has different dips and everything else, lights up the brain in different areas. So first we start to disseminate the idea that everything is, if your parents yelled at you, it's not trauma. It was an unpleasant experience. If you got in a fight with your boyfriend, that's not trauma. That's a very unpleasant experience, or whatever else we might call it. So we first start to separate that, so your brain doesn't go to I'm in trauma response for anything that happens in your life. With neuroencoding, what we do with neuroscience, with brain health, all of those things, we literally take you, and for example, we help you to connect 2 parts of your brain, the 2 hemispheres. And you can do that with specific exercises, which you do bilaterally, or you can do with EMDR, especially for PTSD. EMDR and for trauma is absolutely phenomenal. It's 85% successful, where you will remember later on after the treatment, you will remember the event, but there will be no feelings coming up. It'll be like, oh yeah, my friend got blown up. That was really sad. But there's nothing happening inside of you. There's no pain. There's no panic. There's no anger. There's no fainting. There's nothing. And I have found with my clients, which I absolutely am amazed. I had a girl who was definitely traumatized after a car accident. That was definitely a traumatic experience, when she rolled over and, everything was a big boom. And she did not get on a freeway for 4 years. And within 2 months, she got on a freeway. She got on and off. And after another month and a half, she called me. She goes, I drove 80 miles an hour and it felt great. I'm like, I did too good of a job. Please slow down. So that would be one of them. Another person had a social anxiety that we work with neuroencoding. And the result was within about 3 months. And that's the beauty of neuroencoding and neuroscience. It just works way quicker. It works because it works for the present, here and now, and it works on the biology of your brain that creates those feelings, that creates those thoughts, that creates those responses. And don't get me wrong, sometimes therapy is necessary for some people, but it's not. Some people go to therapy for 10, 15, 7 years. I'm like, what do you do in therapy for 7 years? Unless you are in a dungeon, beaten, raped, abused for years, I get it. Please, rest of your life, stay in there because you need that support. You have been severely scarred. But most of us do not require therapy for years. We need fixes that will permanently change certain things. And that, as I was talking, this girl had a social anxiety to a point where she would go to a public place and then she would either faint or throw up. That's kind of sucks when you're 30 and you want to meet the love of your life. If you go to a public place, you faint or throw up. So we worked with certain patterns. We included celebration, change of release of dopamine, work with different chemicals, with the brain perception and different exercises. And about a month and a half later, she goes, Dominika, I'm in a public place. I'm not fainting and I'm not throwing up. I am uncomfortable. I'm like, fantastic. We love it. We love the uncomfortable. You're there. You're not fainting. So it's progress, right? And it took us about another 2 months where she called me. She goes, I spoke with 6 people. It was awesome. And that was it. There were no medication necessary. Yes, there were certain exercises like going on a swing. And you go, how does going on a swing work? Well, guess what? When you're in your mom's tummy, how does she calm you down? Where does a baby stop moving? When mom is walking. And that's the swinging motion. We have that program into our brain from the very beginning. So we use that to calm down the nervous system. We know that blueberries work very well for the brain and calming down the anxiety. There are specific mirror exercises. I mean, there's so many things we can do. And don't get me wrong, sometimes we put in supplements, but they're natural. And only if that doesn't work, I work with psychiatrists and I go, hey, we did this, and this, and there is improvement, but not good enough. Could you help them? And I refer out to doctors because some things just need extra help temporarily. And one of the things I always tell people, if you go on medication, go on medication. If you believe that's the best thing for you, fine. I'm not going to convince you to try without meds. But I want you to start practicing when you're on the medication. Start rewiring your brain so there's a chance you will get off one day. I had a gentleman who was with me and he was on 17 different meds, all of them for anxiety and depression, because they stopped working, they hired the dose, and then this one helps this one. The side effects were insane. It took us 2 years, so that was probably one of the longest clients. And in 2 years, we got down to 3. And I'm like, I think we're good. And it was with his doctor, right? So he was going to his doctor going, I feel better. Can we take me off something? Can we lower the dose? It's not me. I'm a coach. I cannot take you off medication, but I can support you well enough that you feel strong enough to go to your doctor. And those people who put you on medication are able to wean you off. And please, if you're on meds, do not drop them just the day you decided to get coaching. Don't do that. That can be extremely harmful, even deadly. Do not do that. Because medication sticks in your brain. It takes time to wind off, especially those that produce serotonin and dopamine help you produce those. There are supplements that do that as well that are natural. But if you're on them, that's great. Do something so you can actually get off of them. And then when you feel better, start winding them down. Because overall, yes, these services are expensive, but if you count how much you spend on medication, doctors, and years and things that you went through, this is really saving you a lot of money, time, and misery, because we're miserable. I don't know a person who likes taking medication. If there is one, well, there is a disorder like this. But overall, most people don't like to take medication. So those are just some of the results we have with neuroencoding: getting rid of trauma, PTSD, getting rid of anxiety, getting rid of depression. And I love what Dr. Amen says, is that depression should be treated as a symptom, not as a diagnosis, because depression is what you see. It's the outcome of whatever is happening in your brain. And one of the interesting things, they have done studies in Norway and in other countries in Europe, and they have found that being outside 20 minutes a day in a green environment, doing specific exercises over a year period of time are more effective than Prozac. Walking outside in the green areas. So, and we have science to prove that. Now, again, not everybody can do that. And it's not for everyone, but a majority of us could absolutely use neuroscience to improve quality of our lives. I mean, if you want to be miserable, please, by all means, stay. But if you're done with being miserable, frustrated, overwhelmed, having PTSD, anger management issues, you know, all of those things that are the toxic 10, as we call them, neuroencoding and brain health is the place to go. It's a little bit longer, but overall, it takes way shorter period of time than any type of other, if it's possible for you, of course, because I'm going to keep adding that, because I'm not about to say, oh, this is for everybody. It's not, but it's for a lot of people.
No, and I agree with you. I think that there's not one size fits all. But I do want to dive into something that you kind of like hinted at twice, is the sleep, right? I know you said you're a Cinderella when it comes to sleep, but then also you mentioned blueberries with anxiety. So how much does, sleep and nutrition play into the role of, one, neuroencoding, and two, just the brain function?
60% of your success, literally. What you eat. We check blood work with neuroencoding and with brain health, and we look at your blood work. If you're not producing neurotransmitters, if you're putting crap and you cannot feed your brain, then your brain cannot function properly. If your brain cannot function properly, it produces behaviors and thoughts that are influencing how you live. So absolutely, sleep is crucial. Yes, there are some people that can do on 4 hours of sleep. That's maybe 0.5% of the world's population. No, you cannot sleep 4 hours and function well. No, 6 hours is not enough. Men can sleep less than women. That is true. Their brains are a little bit different, but the 7 hours is the minimum on average. And no, you cannot sleep ahead of time and then I'll sleep all weekend and I'll catch up. No, you can't catch up on sleep. Your brain during the sleep phase cleans out the BS. You are receiving 1.6 billion information daily. That's how much information processed. Consciously, you process 168,000 more or less. That's consciously what you take in, that you're aware of. Everything else is just coming at you. Your brain at night gets the cleaning crew, starts cleaning up the BS. And sometimes it cleans out the wrong things. So you have holes, and that's how we create stories that never happen, because your brain goes, oh, I cleaned that out. The most likely thing that happened here, okay, I'm going to just put this in. And then you have something. That's why witnesses are not, you have 50 witnesses and everybody saw something else because of their filters, their perceptions, their experiences, and the part of cleaning out the brain. That's when memory is created. You don't memorize things when you're learning them. You memorize them when you're asleep. That's why sleep and memory are connected. That's why it is so important for you to sleep and before midnight. And it's even more important that you go to sleep more or less at the same time every time. It is so important that you don't tell your brain that it's daylight when it's night. And we do that with blue light, TV, and phone. So if you're sitting at night and scrolling, not only you're creating dopamine and anxiety and a few other things, you're also telling your brain it's daylight. And your brain needs at least an hour to start producing natural melatonin, right? So all of those things, those processes, remember, our brain is primitive. We have science, but our brain still operates the way it was operating 50,000 years ago. Nothing has changed.
No, that's so amazing.
So we need to use those things to work for us. So yes, sleep is crucial. Circadian rhythms, which you can hear Dr. Huberman talk about a lot, are crucial. 15 to 20 minutes outside every day when you wake up. Exposure to sun helps production of vitamin D, waking up the good cortisol so you can wake up. Cortisol wakes you up. We need cortisol. We just don't need the constant cortisol, right? And then all of those processes, what you eat, Don't get me wrong. Yes, there could be way better way of it, but if you choose to eat less sugar, not to drink, you will be better off than 80% of the world's population. That's all. Those two things. And yes, veggies are more important than, than bread. Although I'm Polish, right? Potatoes are my life. I know how to make 75 dishes out of potatoes. There's no way I'm getting rid of potatoes. And they're starchy, yes, and they turn into simple carbs. But guess what? For people who are called naysayers, the brain needs simple carbs if you want them to say yes. And there's a whole, okay, do you have a wife, or do you have a friend who has a wife that always says no?
I have a wife. She doesn't always say no, though. But
okay. So for men or women that have a partner that always says no, especially to the intimate encouragement, like, you want to go to the store? No, I don't want to go to the store. I'm busy, right? First of all, start saying, I know you don't want to go to the store. They will say, why do you say I don't want to go to the store? Of course I want to go to the store. It's a brain function, right? So it's not their personality. And we used to say that's a personality. No, the defiant disorder is the result of few parts of your brain not working correctly. Then you're gonna feed them pasta. You're gonna feed them simple carbs. Then you're gonna take them for a walk, because physical activity allows a certain chemicals to go to their brain and change the sugar into, I forgot the name of the chemical. Then after you come back, you're gonna feed them one tiny bit of dark chocolate, which sends signal to the brain that something good is about to happen. And do not feed them the whole chocolate, because something good will happen and the whole process will be ruined. And then you're going to touch them on the shoulder, and then you just, without talking, will invite them to the bedroom. The chances of them ending up with you in a bedroom for your partner are absolutely insane. And this is something Dr. Amen tested. In neuroencoding, we would also do other exercises, but this is one that connects nutrition and brain science. Absolutely crucial what you eat.
That's crazy. Before we wrap up, and guys, I do want to say, if you guys want to dig into this, before Dominika shares her information on how to connect, she does have a book as well that you can get on Amazon. I'll put it in the show notes as well. But it's the magic of dreaming big, acting small, and achieving success. Obviously, she's been dropping knowledge left and right, and I know if you want to dive in, just like I'm going to dive in even more, make sure you get a copy of her book. But before we wrap up, I got one question to ask you, and I don't like to give this question beforehand because I don't like people to think about it. I want it to be the first thing that you think of, right? So this is, Dominika, this is your legacy wall. On this legacy wall, you get to leave one message, whether it's, about neuroencoding, about your own personal journey, but one message that you get to leave for the generations to come. What would that message be?
Short or long?
Either or.
Okay. Circumstances do not define you. You are creator of your reality. Choose your friends wisely. Choose your thoughts even wiser. And make sure that you are your own priority. Nobody is responsible for your life but you. And joy is something that you can create within. Life is exactly what you dare to make it, and fortune favors the bold.
Man, that has probably been one of the best ones to date. That is awesome. I love that one. Dominika, where can people get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing and have going on? If social media's website.
Absolutely, great question. So I work with corporations at corporate training, and I introduce trainings for corporations and companies with neuroscience based, so they're more effective. People work better, happier work environment, and people can actually self-control, less work for HR, and for individuals as well. And you can go to yourbraincoachd.com. That's my website. And then you can find me on social media, Your Brain Coach D on Instagram, Your Brain Coach D on Facebook, Your Brain Coach D on LinkedIn. There are 2 different newsletters. One is on LinkedIn, one is on my private website. Feel free to sign up. You get some awesome knowledge that you get to do. And of course, please feel free to reach out to me for the programs and coaching and trainings and public speaking that I have for everybody. There's something that you can make your life a better place, because at the end of the day, you know, there's no reason to regret anything. We do the best we know with the knowledge we have, but it is our responsibility to get more knowledge and do it differently.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Guys, make sure that you guys share this episode with a friend. I was so excited, and I was not let down by anything she said, so I know you guys weren't. But make sure you guys leave that review, and until next time, see you guys, and we appreciate you. We love you all.
Thank you so much.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset causes stress. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to